With the help of the imperial Sardaukar, the Harkonnens led a raid against House Atreides. Paul and Jessica were forced deep into the desert. It is here in the desert that Paul sees the full scope of the terrible purpose which he had first glimpsed after meeting the old Reverend Mother Gaius Helen Mohiam. He sees the Jihad, the religious war in his name, stretching throughout the universe, plaguing every inhabited world. By the time Paul realized that he couldn't stop it, the momentum was such that even if he had died, he would be martyred, and the Jihad would continue in his name, and perhaps be even worse. Perhaps if Paul had died before he came into contact with the Fremen, the Jihad could have been prevented, but Paul had no way of knowing at the time that this may have been the only solution. Frank Herbert uses a metaphor to describe the limitations of Paul's vision. Muad'dib could indeed see the future, but you must understand the limits of this power. Think of sight. You have eyes yet cannot see without light. If you are on the floor of a valley, you cannot see beyond your valley. Just so, Muad'dib could not always choose to look across the mysterious terrain. The stakes are extremely high because these events are taking place on Arrakis, the economic center of the universe. What happened on this planet affected everything in the galaxy. In becoming the Kwisatz Haderach, Paul becomes the fulcrum by which the universe turns. That means that his actions are like large ripples through time. Paul was able to steer humankind onto the best possible course, which still resulted in the death of over 60 billion people. When Paul brought down the Emperor and his Sardaukar forces, the Fremen warriors expanded the battle to the other inhabited worlds. The Jihad would eventually spread throughout the entire galaxy to millions of planets. The only planet that was free from the Jihad was Caladan. The Lady Jessica would not allow it. She refused to give the Fremen any access to the planet that she had spent 2 decades on beside her beloved Duke. The Landsraad had attempted to overthrow Paul after his ascension. After this, the Fremen, motivated by religious fervor, went from system to system, coming into conflict with other customs and religions. It took only 10 Fremen legions to overthrow House McNaught and the combined forces of the Kalak star system and the Malathon star system. Naraj was one of the planets conquered during the Jihad. Fremen Fadakin Farak, who later betrays Paul, was in command of the campaign. It was on Naraj that Farak's son, first introduced in Dune Messiah, lost his eyesight in a stone burner attack. The Dune Encyclopedia mentions that the conquered worlds provided Paul Muad'dib with the workforce, material, and whole structures for his palace. It is also mentioned that sometime during the Jihad, Paul sent terraformers to other worlds in order to observe lakes, rivers, jungles, and oceans, and then attempt to remake them on Arrakis. By the end of the Jihad, 40 religions and their followers had been annihilated, 90 planets fully sterilized, and an additional 500 worlds were demoralized. When the last of the Fremen legions returned to Arrakis, there was no force in the universe that could oppose Paul. There was now only one religion, and only one army. House Carino was a shadow of its former self. The tension between them and House Atreides was negligible. Unity now existed in the space once occupied by a balance of forces. The guild was now merely a pawn of the Emperor Paul Muad'dib. The Bene Gesserit had been stripped of their power, and House Atreides now had outright control of Chom. At no other time in history had the Imperial House possessed such power. Though Paul can be seen as the hero of the original Dune novel, he would not be considered as a hero to most in the Dune universe. To the average person, little would have improved since the reign of House Carino. In fact, for many, it would have gotten much worse. Paul was every bit the despot that Shaddam IV was, and even rejects a petition for a constitution. That being said, though Paul has a certain amount of responsibility for the suffering that was unleashed upon the universe, he cannot be fully blamed. The momentum that built around him became unstoppable. Atrocities were being committed in his name on countless worlds. how could he stop them? The system that set Paul up to become the messianic ruler of the Fremen in the first place was set in motion by the Bene Gesserit sisterhood, whose Missionara Protectiva planted the seeds that would grow into his myth. In part, they can be blamed as well. Though the Fremen thought Paul was a god, he was not. He was a man with limited power, as bound to his own fate as anyone else.